I was simply going about my work of delivering mail in Oakwood Estates when I heard the unmistakable slapping of designer sandals on the pavement behind me. Before I could even turn around, a shrill voice pierced the still morning air. Stop right there. What do you think you're doing? The woman demanded, her face flushed with what I can only describe as righteous indignation. I knew her at once. Margaret Holloway, the HOA president. Everyone in the neighborhood called behind her back. I'd been working in this neighborhood for 3 years and had my fair share of encounters with her, but nothing like what was to come. Good morning, Mrs. Holloway, just delivering today's mail, I replied with practiced formality. I don't think so, she snarled, lunging forward and actually grabbing several envelopes from my hand. These flyers are patently against Section 4.6 of our HOA bylaws concerning unsolicited materials, and I've seen suspicious packages being handed over to the Johnsons. All week I kept my cool but firm. Ma'am, you have to take back those letters right away. Hindering mail delivery is don't you tell me what I can and can't do in my neighborhood? She cut in, waving the letters around my face. I'm the president of this HOA. I have jurisdiction here in the distance. I heard sirens coming. What Margaret didn't know was that my supervisor had told all carriers to call in straight away if anyone attempted to interfere with our deliveries. This wasn't the first time Margaret had created a problem, but it would definitely be the last. I've lived in neighborhoods with homeowner associations in the past, but Oakwood Estates raised it to an entirely different level altogether. The rule book was thicker than a phone book, outlining everything from the exact shade of beige that was acceptable for exterior paint to the height restriction of garden gnomes that were only tolerated in the month of May. For reasons no one could tell, at the hub of this web of regulations was Margaret Holloway, a 50-something, blonde bobbed highlighted woman with a formidable collection of statement necklaces. Margaret had been voted HOA president 3 years ago without opposition after she systematically belittled her predecessor until he resigned. Since then, she'd been on a crusade to maintain property values by policing every aspect of everyone's life. She'd catch you for placing your trash can out 6 hours too early or grass half an inch too long. Most residents just paid the fines to avoid confrontation, which only gave her more courage. For the last month, Margaret had developed an odd obsession with mail delivery. She'd cornered me a number of times, asking about who received what, particularly targeting packages sent to houses where both working adults spent the day outdoors. She was convinced something illicit was happening, though her perception of illicit included everything from receiving too many Amazon packages to getting political pamphlets she did not support. I've been watching you, she said to me one day, showing up unexpectedly as I sorted mail at my truck. The Patels get an abnormal amount of packages from abroad. I believe they're operating an illicit business. The Patels get care packages from their relatives in India, I explained calmly, and federal law guarantees their privacy, so I am not allowed to speak about their mail to you. This explanation seemed to just infuriate her suspicions. I later found out she'd been taking photos of me delivering mail and questioning neighbors about their deliveries being in compliance. Some residents told me she'd asked to inspect their personal mail for HOA compliance. Most declined, but some bullied residents had actually let her view their private mail. Things only took a turn for the worse 3 days ago. I was delivering on Maple Street when Margaret pulled up in her white SUV, parking at an angle that blocked my mail truck. She emerged in what I can only describe as her official uniform, a navy blue blazer with a handmade badge reading HOA Enforcement. I have to see what you're bringing today, she demanded, her voice ringing out down the street. Several snoopy neighbors gazed out of their windows. Mrs. Holloway, I've informed you before, I am not going to allow anyone sort through mail that isn't addressed to them. It's federal law, I said firmly. Don't quote me laws, she said, waving her hand away. The HOA has covenants that supersede regular mail rules. We have a complete ban on distributing some materials in our neighborhood. I tried to get around her, but she stepped right in front of me. I'm not asking. I'm ordering you show what's in your bag now. Or I'll call your supervisor, please do. I said calmly. They will tell you exactly what I'm telling you. Now please take your car so I can continue on my way. That's when Margaret had snapped, her face contorted with anger as she reached and grabbed my mail satchel, tearing it open and stuffing her hand inside before I could stop her. She'd pulled out a handful of letters to the Johnsons and Wilsons, just as I had guessed. She said, waving the envelope's political material. The Wilsons are registered with the other party. They're not allowed to post political signs, and that includes the delivery of propaganda through the mail. I couldn't believe what was happening. A small group had gathered now, watching as Margaret sifted through private mail, which did not belong to her. I immediately grabbed my phone and dialed both my supervisor and the non-emergency police line, making sure Margaret could hear me. I'm reporting a case of tampering with mail and obstruction of delivery of mail, I said loudly at 354 2 Maple Street in Oakwood Estates. Margaret rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please, mail tampering. Don't be so dramatic. I'm holding an official HOA investigation. I have every right to protect this neighborhood from illegal material. Mrs. Holloway, I declared, my patience thinning out, but my tone still professional. Tampering with mail is a federal offense punishable by up to 5 years in prison and fines up to $250,000. Please hand back those letters immediately. For a moment's hesitation passed over her face, but it set hard at once again into holy outrage that never reaches HOA agents. We have unique jurisdiction in our district. I've done seminars on this at least a dozen times already. Neighbors were gawking from front lawns and driveways. I could see phones taping the incident. Margaret seemed to notice her audience and doubled up, playing to the crowd. Anyone I've caught our mail carrier bringing in unauthorized materials into our neighborhood, she yelled loudly. This is why your HOA dues are necessary to watch out for these infractions. Most neighbors seemed embarrassed of her, and others appeared genuinely concerned, although I suspect more about what Margaret was up to than any imagined of mail scheme. When I tried to understand the letters she'd taken down, she in fact moved away and pushed them against her back like a child. Keep away, sir. These items are seized under HOA bylaw 7.3, she declared with absurd solemnity. I'll be to bring these to the board meeting as evidence just when things were about to blow up even more. We heard sirens in the distance. Margaret smiled, obviously assuming the police were on their way to uphold her position. What pulled up instead were 2 vehicles, a local police vehicle and an unmarked one with government plates. Finally, Margaret sneered with a self-satisfied smile. Now we'll get this in line properly. The local officer appeared first, but the 2 men from the unmarked car quickly took hold into the scene. They presented themselves as federal postal inspectors. Something I knew was real, but Margaret apparently didn't. Ma'am, I'm Inspector Rodriguez, and this is Inspector Chen from the United States Postal Inspection Service, read the woman in the dark suit, producing her federal badge. We received a complaint of mail tampering and obstruction of mail delivery. Are you Margaret Holloway? Margaret's face went through an astonishing transformation, from smugness to confusion to the first glimmer of genuine concern. Yes, but all this is a miscommunication. I'm the HOA president here, and I was conducting an official walkthrough of material entering our community. Inspector Chen spoke next, his voice calm but firm. Mrs. Holloway, are those postal items in your hand mailed to you? Well, no, but did you indeed take them from a United States Postal Service carrier or his delivery vehicle? Only because he wouldn't listen to Mrs. Holloway, Inspector Rodriguez interrupted sternly. You should know that what you've just admitted to is federal mail tampering under Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 1703, and obstruction of mail delivery under Section 1701. These are heinous federal crimes for the first time in my knowing. Her Margaret remained speechless. Her mouth opened and closed a couple of times, but nothing came out. The letters she'd been clutching slipped from her suddenly limp fingers. I moved forward and carefully picked up the fallen mail, stuffing it back into my satchel. The crowd of neighbors had grown, and many were openly recording the event with their cell phones. I could nearly see the videos posting onto the neighborhood Facebook group in real time. There must be some confusion, Margaret finally stuttered. I'm an HA president. I have a right in this community. The bylaws clearly state, Mrs. Holloway, Inspector Chen said firmly but politely. Homeowner association bylaws do not supersede federal law. No private organization has right to interrupt United States mail. Your position as HOA president gives you absolutely no legal authority to intercept, check, or appropriate mail sent to other persons. but political material she initiated is okay to mail. Inspector Rodriguez finished on her behalf, and even if it were not enforcement, would be upon us not. You, the local police officer who had held back during this altercation, now step forward, Mrs. Holloway. Please put your hands behind your back. Margaret's eyes widened in genuine shock. You're arresting me for upholding HOA rules. No, ma'am, replied the officer. You're being arrested for federal mail tampering and obstruction of mail delivery, as the inspectors have explained. What ensued was tragic and peculiarly satisfying. Margaret was handcuffed there on Maple Street for all the community to witness. She'd bullied for years as the officers took her to the police cruiser. Her cool finally broke entirely. This is absurd, she yelled, her voice breaking. Do you have any idea how much my husband and I pay in property taxes? I want to speak with your supervisor. All of your supervisors? The crowd stood in stunned silence as Margaret was placed in the back of the police car. Before he closed the door, Inspector Rodriguez read her rights advising her she would be booked at the local station, but that the charges were federal in character. The gravity of the situation seemed to finally sink in with Margaret, whose face had flushed red with rage and then gone pale with fear. After hearing my report from the postal inspectors, I could complete my route, though it took longer than usual, with neighbors stopping me to ask what had happened. Many were relieved and shared their own stories of Margaret's reign of terror. The Patels invited me in for homemade samosas, as a thank you for finally standing up to that woman. 2 weeks later, I delivered a certified letter to Margaret's house, official correspondence from the federal court through neighborhood gossip and Margaret's own loud complaints at the grocery store. I learned that she had been charged with multiple federal offenses despite hiring an expensive attorney. The evidence was overwhelming, not just from the incident I witnessed, but from previous mail interference that other residents had documented but had been too afraid to report. Ultimately, Margaret pleaded guilty to lesser charges, but the penalties were still severe. A $25,000 fine, 3 years of probation, and 500 hours of community service. The judge, with either a sadistic sense of humor or a keen sense of irony, assigned her community service hours to be served at the local post office, helping sort mail. The kiss of death came when the HOA board convened an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove Margaret from her position. As board president notified her of the decision, her face twisted in shock and rage. You can't do this to me, she shrieked, her designer bag clutched to her chest. I am this community. I've given everything to maintain our standards. The new board president simply handed her a certified letter which I had delivered that morning with the official notification of her dismissal. Actually, Mrs. Holloway, your actions have committed an infraction of Section 2.1 of our bylaws. No board member shall engage in a legal activity that brings disrepute to the community. The vote was unanimous.